Okay, so what if I told you that in the future, your job, your government, even the money in your pocket could be totally obsolete? I know, it sounds like science fiction, right? But that's the pretty wild vision we're diving into today. It's all based on this really thought-provoking text by an author named Feng, and he basically argues that humanity is standing on the edge of a massive, massive change. So let's get into it and break down what he predicts.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We've got 5 main parts. First, we'll look at the changes that have already happened, stuff we're all familiar with. Then, things get a little more intense as we dive into the author's really radical predictions about our jobs and even our whole society. And we'll wrap up with his, well, pretty surprising solution for how we're all supposed to get through this. All right, so to build up to these really huge predictions, the author does something kind of smart. He doesn't just jump into the crazy future stuff. Nope, he starts with things we've all seen happen in our own lifetimes. It's all about laying the groundwork, setting the stage for the much more radical ideas that are coming. So take travel, for example. The author gives this really simple but powerful comparison. I mean, think about it. If you had to go on a long trip, would you pick an ox cart or a plane? It's a no-brainer, right? Of course not. And that massive jumping technology, that's the benchmark he uses. It's his way of saying, look how far we've come, and now get ready for an even bigger leap. And it's the exact same story with communication. Why on earth would you write a letter and wait weeks for it to get there when you can just pull out your smartphone and be connected instantly? The author's point here is really clear. These old tools aren't just old. They've been totally and completely replaced by something better. Okay, and this is where the author makes a really crucial turn. He takes these examples we can all agree on and then hits us with a much more challenging question. He asks, all right, if we all agree our tools can become obsolete, are we ready to admit that our jobs might be next? And that question leads us right into the next section. And believe me, this is where it starts to hit a little closer to home for all of us. Because the author argues that this next big wave of obsolescence, it's not about our gadgets anymore. It's about human labor itself, all thanks to AI and robotics. And just look at the kinds of jobs he's talking about. We're not just talking about manual labor here, like factory work or something. The author specifically calls out professions that we've always thought of as safe, Accountants, lawyers, even teachers and civil servants. The argument is brutally simple. If a job's tasks can be turned into a set of rules or a program, it's on the chopping block. So if you follow that logic all the way to the end, where does it lead? The author really pushes it to its ultimate and kind of scary conclusion. If AI and robots eventually do almost everything, then what's left for us? What's the point of human beings in this new world? And, well, this is maybe the most shocking claim in the whole text. The author says that we will find humans have gradually evolved into a surplus species on this planet. I mean, just let that sink in. From this point of view, we're at risk of becoming, well, just creatures that use up resources and create waste, no longer essential to the system. It's a really unsettling thought for sure, and it's absolutely central to everything else he argues. But believe it or not, the argument doesn't even stop with our jobs. The author predicts that if human labor becomes unnecessary, then the big institutions we've built around that labor, the very pillars of modern society, are also doomed to just crumble away. The text basically describes this giant cascade, like a series of dominoes falling. It starts with the most personal thing, marriage and the family. Once that goes, the author says nations and borders start to dissolve. Then, things like political parties and organized religions lose their purpose. And the last domino to fall? Money itself. The whole concept. Every single one is framed as just an old idea from a bygone era, something that simply won't fit in the world that's coming. Okay, so after painting this pretty bleak picture of total collapse, the author makes another big pivot. Because you have to ask, right? If all these external things we value, our jobs, our countries, our money, if they all just vanish, what's left? What actually has value anymore? And this is where the whole argument flips from being about external wealth to something based completely on our inner value. In this quote right here, this is really the philosophical heart of the author's whole solution. He who does not plan for eternity is not fit to plan for a moment. He who does not plan for the whole is not fit to plan for a small part. What he's really saying is, we need to stop obsessing over the temporary material stuff that's all about to go away anyway. Instead, we need to zoom out and adopt this much bigger, more holistic view of why we're even here.
So this is the big switch in what drives us, according to the author. The old way, chasing money, buying stuff, accumulating assets, that all becomes totally meaningless. The new priority, the new goal for humanity is to cultivate what he calls spiritual and heart wealth. We're talking about things like inner peace, real connection with others, and a higher level of consciousness.
Which brings us to the final, and honestly, the most critical piece of this entire puzzle. The big question is, how do you actually survive this? How do you thrive in this completely new world? And according to the author, the answer has nothing to do with learning a new skill or having a lot of money. It's all about one thing: consciousness.
And he uses this really interesting metaphor for it, a perfect spiritual garden. What he means by that is your inner world, right? Your sense of harmony, your level of awareness, your inner peace. In the future, he imagines, this is the one and only thing that can't be automated or replaced. It's the only asset that actually matters. And, as the text claims, it's the only thing that will be preserved when everything else is gone.
So after all this heavy analysis, all these wild predictions, the entire text boils everything down to one single direct instruction, a final call to action for every single one of us.
And here it is. Let our consciousness enter the new era first. That's the core message. Before any of the stuff out there on the world changes, the real transformation has to happen inside you. You simply can't adapt to this new world on the outside until you've already made that leap on the inside, in your own consciousness.
And with that, the author leaves us hanging with one last, really provocative question. After this whole argument that our consciousness has to go first, that it's the key to everything, the text just asks, so, what about our bodies? It's this final little nudge that leaves you to really think about what all of this means for the future of humanity itself. Pretty deep stuff to chew on.